Okay.
Isaiah 43 and verse 2. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee. And through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. And when thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burnt, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. And then go to Isaiah 44 and verse 21. Remember these, O Jacob and Israel, for thou art my servant. I have formed thee, thou art my servant, my servant. O Israel, thou shalt not be forgotten of me. And just for a few minutes, I want to take the passage of Isaiah 44 and 21 that says, remember, remember. There's going to be times in your life where you're going to go to a place where you do not understand what God is doing. You're going to go to a place where you are going to feel confused. You're going to feel that God has left you. You're going to feel that there's no use for anything anymore in this life. You're going to feel like all hell, all hell has broken loose in your life. But what God is trying to do and what God wants to do is for you to not see the picture yet. What does that mean, Brother Brian? That means if you see the picture, if you see destiny yet, you're going to forget God. You're going to forget the one that made destiny. God don't want you to get to destiny without you seeing who made the destiny. Does that make sense? God don't want you to see the big picture yet. Because if you see the big picture, you're not going to remember who made the picture. I feel excited. You're not going to remember who walked with you through the waters, who kept you through fire, who's been with you through everything. If I see destiny, I'm going to glorify destiny that is in my flesh. If I see heaven, I'm going to glorify heaven. But I'm not to heaven yet, and I'm not to destiny yet, because God wants the glory. Jesus wants the glory and not destiny. If you look at the, I believe it was Elijah that sat by the tree, am I right? Elijah that sat by the tree, that the angel came to him. I believe it was Elijah. And he said, God, I'm tired and I'm weary. I'm paraphrasing it, but God, there's no use for me anymore. No prophet is doing right. But God said, I have 7,000 or 10,000 other prophets that you don't know about. Elijah had to remember that Jesus is the God of everything. Elijah had to remember that if I sat down by the juniper tree, Elijah had to remember that Jesus is everything, because you will get like Elijah. Elijah was a man of God. Elijah was a prophet. But prophets get weak. And a man of God gets weak. But Jesus saying, somebody remember. Somebody remember who Jesus is. If you remember, then you can get the glory for the other thing. Israel went 40 years in the wilderness. And they kept on, and they kept on. But I believe the reason why Israel had to go 40 years is because they sought after the promised land. But too many of them sought after the promised land and not after the promised serve. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Too many of them saw miracles, but forgot the one that did the miracles. Too many of them saw healings, but forgot the ones that did the healings. I do not want the healings if I'm going to forget the one that does. I don't want my promise. I don't want nothing, but I want the promiser and I want Jesus. He said in Isaiah, I will be with you. I won't forsake you. I won't leave you. Remember, just because you're in the fire, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, how did it feel for you to be thrown in the fire? It did not feel good. I know it was hot, but remember, the fire didn't destroy him. And just because you're in the fire, and just because you're in a wilderness, don't mean the vipers are going to bite you. Just because you're going through something in life doesn't mean all hell's going to bite you. It can't bite you. It can only try to bite. But Jesus said, I'm going to be there. Jesus said, I'm going to go with you through the end. How much time is that?
About 6 minutes.
Jesus said, the reason why Jesus gives us these trials, because Jesus is saying, are you going to worship the healings that I'm going to give to you? Are you going to worship the visions? Jesus is saying, are you going to worship what I do? Or are you going to worship Jesus, the one that gives them? I'm talking about remembering who you are. Saints of God, we've got to remember that Jesus is everything. And if I ain't got Jesus, then life is nothing. If I don't remember Jesus, why am I living in life? Because Jesus is the one that heals. Jesus is the one that saves. It wasn't Peter walking on the water. God made him walk on the water. God said, come on, Peter, if you're going to walk on the water with me, you got to know who you're dealing with. When you come inside Jesus' presence, you got to know who you're dealing with. Don't take it for just because you're here. But Jesus' presence is here. And you got to know that Jesus is in the house. Remember, when you walk through fire and when you walk through water, Jesus will be there.